Hello YouTube, I'm back again. This is a picture I just took of a diagram I just drew in my notebook. I just have a personal notebook. Long story short, this is pretty much going to be irrefutable proof I've been right all along about so many videos for the entire duration of this channel. It's going to be proof that I've been right about so many important things, and it's going to be proof ultimately that I'm right in my recent videos to have started admitting, sorry, not just admit, but more like in my recent videos started to give arguments on the channel that it is actually very much possible to manufacture gold at home. I showed a few different ways. I talked about a few different ways to manufacture the gold at home, ways that are really not that complicated. Well, now I have, but this is one of them. However, I've drawn it on this diagram. This is one of the ways I've talked about. Okay, keep that in mind. But now I've finally drawn the science behind it. That solidifies my argument. You see, it turns out, funnily enough, a lot of people hear the argument I've been talking about recently about manufacturing gold. And one of the methods that I told them they could do it by is just what's shown here. You basically just take brass and copper. What do you see right here? This is depicting brass, the atomic nucleus of the element. Same thing for copper. Brass and copper are brown and yellow in color, so brown and yellow makes gold as a color. Diagram 2 is you actually can see the electrons, the proton. You can actually see the electrons that are orbiting the protons and neutrons. This is the protons and neutrons for gold, brass, and copper in the two different diagrams. But even so, either way, despite that, if you zoomed out from the protons and neutrons, you would see the typical diagram that people draw to show the orbiting electrons of an atomic nucleus is as such, and you basically have it drawn this way because they're trying to show is the electrons that are orbiting the protons and neutrons. The only reason you have that shape of the lines, the lines like this, like those lines, the only reason we have that is actually just simply because those are just the lines we draw as a visual to show the orbiting electrons. If those lines are really there, on such an atomic scale, yes, they are actually there. Because there has to be some kind of line by which electrons are orbiting on, some trail, so to speak, and they do follow some sort of trail or path that goes in those orbiting directions. And it must be a and it takes the form of the shape of a line of lines. So it is legitimately, it's not pseudoscience that they've released in the education system. It's true. Pretty much everybody knows this at this point. Why is this relevant? How does this help my argument? Well, because the only reason people argue against what I've been saying here is because people think, for some very funny reason, that somehow it's impossible to change the element. To change an element, it's impossible to change the nucleus of an atom. If you change the nucleus of an atom, that's how you change the element. That I agree with. That I've proven. That people have proven. It's common knowledge in the education system. It's common knowledge in science, okay, and in fields of study. However, as I've said, the reason people have been refuting my argument lately is because they're simply just regurgitating what they're taught in the education system. And what is it that the education system makes them regurgitate about this? The education system says that you cannot change the nucleus of an atom without nuclear fission or nuclear reactions. In other words, they say you cannot change the element or change the nucleus without causing a nuclear bomb or splitting the atom. Now, here's a funny thing. If you split an atom, yes, you will get a nuclear reaction or nuclear fission, both of which require high force to cause such a reaction. However, did you notice there's a discrepancy between a nuclear fission and a nuclear reaction? A nuclear fission, this is because a nuclear fission is not a nuclear bomb. However, it's not, well, it actually is close in power to that of a nuclear bomb. However, it's more well contained and condensed into a smaller space or a smaller volume. Hence why when they have the particle colliders or nuclear fission technology at all these fancy high-tech institutions and bases and government level places, well, it doesn't blow the place up. It doesn't blow a city up. It's like a lot of the power of it's like a fraction of the portion of the power of a nuclear bomb, except it's condensed and harnessed within a small confines. However, that clearly shows that it is a fraction of a nuclear bomb. Did you notice that implies something? What I'm saying here is true about the math and the physics. How did you produce the nuclear fission reaction? Well, it's simple. They split the atom to get the nuclear fission bomb that was a small fraction of the force of the nuclear bomb itself. However, did you notice that they didn't actually have to split the atom with as much of high force as they'd have to split it with if they created a nuclear bomb? You see, that shows there's a discrepancy here. The force at which you split an atom determines if you get a nuclear fission or a nuclear reaction. If you split an atom to get nuclear fission, you'd have to split that atom pretty freaking hard. But if you split an atom to get a nuclear reaction, you'd have to split it even harder than the nuclear fission, because it's just simply the basic addition. It's just like multiple times more force applied to split the atom. So it really just is basically a nuclear reaction is just what happens if you split an atom much harder than if you split the way you would split it to get a nuclear fission. It's just levels of force, that's all. If that's really true, then that actually implies something very critical to my theory. Guess what that is? It means that if you slowly but surely make the nucleuses of brass and copper come together, you would not split the atoms at all. You would not split the atoms or the nucleuses of brass and copper. You would simply have them gravitate towards each other if you slowly brought them closer to each other. See, as I said here, all the particles slowly come closer to each other and form a new element, gold. If you took brass and copper, you see these nucleuses, you see these diagrams. If you bring them together slowly, then you get what would look like this, and you just have them come together without splitting each other. They would not split each other. They would not ram into each other. They would just slowly form a nice, stable, nice, strong bond without splitting the atom or the nucleus of either. And then you would get gold. You would be combining the nucleuses, you'd get a new element. So why is it that people say, oh, when you see the color gold, how did the color gold, how did it go from the color black to color gold? Well, it's simple. Exactly what happened here. The nucleuses came together slowly. They did not ram into each other and split the atoms or the nucleuses. They just simply gravitated toward each other slowly, so that there was not a nuclear reaction or nuclear fission. There was no bomb. It was not destructive. It was just a benevolent reaction. The two things bonded. They did not destroy each other or fight each other, so to speak. It's like when we're talking about science, it's like we're talking about, are particles going to fight each other, or are they going to form a bond with each other and make peace with each other? It's like philosophy. It actually is philosophy. It's like religion. It actually is religion. I've talked about it. I've shown evidence that religion is made of science and philosophy is made of science. and all things are scientific. But religion and philosophy require science and vice versa. But they're all part of each other. They're all parts of existence. They're contingent upon each other. I talked about that stuff a really long time ago. That stuff has actually been discovered by a lot of people for a lot of history. It's just that as applied to something like this, people have not quite followed through. But I have finished the work. I have discovered the truth, and this I believe is going to be undeniable eventually, hopefully soon. Okay, people will have no choice but to admit I'm right. I mean, it just simply comes down to how do you make two things come together. If you make them come together with high force, they will break each other. If you make them come together slowly, they will not break each other in any way at all. They will simply form a strong bond and form a new element. And they literally teach in the education system that if you combine the nucleus of two atoms, of two elements, you get a new element. They even say that's how gold was formed. They said that the atomic nucleuses of different elements in outer space, they said they came together and combined. Now, of course, they teach in the education system that to combine them, they had to ram into each other. I don't think ramming nucleuses or atoms together is as likely to form a new element as would be having them slowly come together like shown here, for reasons that I would hope would be obvious to most people. I mean, in physics, when we ram particles together, everyday objects are particles, but we ram them together, they don't combine, they break each other. So why would it be any different with the very same kinds of components of everyday objects? I don't know. Sorry about that image I was just showing to the right. It was a picture I took of a paper for work. So I just want to give a disclaimer, that was an accident. I do not authorize that to be used as if I own it. Legally, it's not really an advertisement or anything. It's just I accidentally scrolled to that. But yeah, I don't think it's going to get me a copyright or anything. But yeah, yeah, that's about it for this video. Let me know what you think. Do you think that it's possible that if you ram two atoms in the nucleus of the atoms together, that's going to form a new element? Do you think that's more likely to form an element, or do you think it's more likely if you just slowly bring them together and have them come really close to where they are strongly attached to each other without ramming into each other? I mean, following the logic of the things I said, I think it's pretty obvious that ramming them together is not very likely. But yeah, I mean, basically that's all it boils down to, like I said. Because if it really is true that you don't have to ram them together to form a new element, then all you have to do is the opposite of ram them together. Because that's the only other thing it could possibly be. The education system literally says you'd either have to ram them together to combine them, or you'd have to do something else to bring them together. Something else, some other kind of form of movement. I mean, moving things together would be ramming things together. But there's another form of movement that isn't ramming things together, and it's just slowly bringing them closer to each other. It's one or the other. It's bringing them together fast or bringing them together slowly, and that's all it can be. And the truth is, if the education system admits that those are the two options, then we just have to put to the test which of the two options is more true. Which holds up, which makes more sense, which actually proves to be more likely. And I've shown it on this diagram. This is exactly what these diagrams are for. It shows you exactly what would be more likely. That's exactly what this is intended to show. That's exactly what this, especially this part, is intended to show. Again, these are just showing you zoom outs of the two atoms, the brass and the copper. But when you get here, this particular diagram here, I drew this. That's why I drew the arrow to show if you add the two elements together, which are these, you'll get an interaction that looks like this, and they'll just slowly gravitate. This is after they've slowly gravitated towards each other to form gold. That's all it is. It's not that complicated. People are overthinking it. So that's all there is for this video. honestly, there's nothing left to say for this video. I really hope you enjoyed. Please like, share, subscribe. Bye. Because